Hello everyone, my name is Naomi, aka Nifty Nomi, and welcome to my channel, Be That Business. I'm a Canadian bookkeeper and a new business educator, and I help entrepreneurs look under the hood to see how it all works. I'm fighting the good fight against double work and against giving CRA more money than you have to. Today, I'm going to discuss CRA's new GST HST Filing Screen, the GST HST Simplified Regime, and what that means for Canadian businesses. CRA has recently updated their GST HST Filing Screen to be a bit more clear about what totals go in what boxes, which I think is a great improvement to assist business owners in filing their GST HST online. Instead of just having line 105, total GST, HST, and adjustments for period, they now include the details of this line, and that is 103 plus 104. And 103 is helpfully described as GST, HST collected or that became collectible in the reporting period. This is much more clearer than the vague description of line 105, just total GST, HST, and adjustments. And it happens again in the credit section. Instead of just line 108, total ITCs and adjustments, they now include the details of this line, that is 106 plus 107. And 106 is helpfully described as ITCs for the current period and unclaimed ITCs from a previous period. It would have been nice to have a link on what ITCs were, that is, input tax credits, the GST HST paid on expenses and purchases in relation to commercial activities. If you're wondering how this may change how you file your GST HST online, before we just put the total of line 103, that's the GST HST collected, and line 104, the adjustments, together in line 105. And if you had no adjustments, you would simply be putting in the GST HST collected on sales in box 105. Now you just need to put it in box 103, and it will automatically add it to 105 for you. And that's the same with the GST HST input tax credits. That is the GST HST you paid on your business expenses and purchases. Before, we just put the total of line 106, the ITCs, plus 107, any adjustments, into box 108. If you had no adjustments, you would simply be putting the ITCs directly into box 108. Now you just need to put it in a box 106, and it will automatically add it to 108 for you. But what has really inspired my video today is that they have added a very interesting caveat that sure caught my attention. Under the description of line 106 for the total ITCs paid on expenses, it reads, GST HST paid on purchases from non-resident suppliers who are registered under the simplified regime cannot be claimed as an input tax credit or a rebate. For more detailed information, please consult GST HST Notice 322. I read that and I thought, wait, what? There is such thing as GST HST charged on a business expense that actually cannot be claimed as a credit? And apparently, yep. And apparently this was announced back in 2021 and I totally missed it. Though that was in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and we were also dealing with lockdowns and CEWS filings or queues. I do remember that announcement though, and I had erroneously thought that it had big implications for non-Canadian businesses who I don't work with. But now I see how wrong I was. I've included a link to that GST HST Notice 322 in the description of this video. They say the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the second best time is now. So if you two are only just realizing what those 2021 digital measures from CRA actually entailed for domestic Canadian businesses, let me give you the lowdown on what this means when it comes to the section about the GST HST Simplified Regime. First of all, what is the GST HST Simplified Regime? Effective July 1st, 2021, non-resident vendors and distribution platform operators that supply taxable digital products or services to Canadian consumers must register under the Simplified GST HST registration system, that is, if they are not registered under the general rules, where sales to Canadian consumers exceed or are expected to exceed $30,000 over a 12-month period. Now, if you are a non-resident business looking to learn more about how this GST HST simplified regime works and what you need to do, I have included a link in the video description for you to investigate further. But what does this mean for Canada's resident businesses who are paying for supplies and services from non-resident businesses? What makes this simplified regime different for the business customers of these registrants are two main factors. Number one, suppliers registered under the simplified regime are not required to collect tax on taxable supplies made to GST HST registrants, that is, non-consumers, or put another way, Canadian businesses registered for GST HST. To avoid the payment of GST HST on purchases from simplified regime registrants, a customer must provide its GST HST registration number to the supplier. And now I finally understand why all these digital platforms are asking me for my business number. Number two, GST HST charged by registrants under the simplified regime is not eligible to be claimed as an input tax credit, an ITC. While GST HST registered businesses are generally entitled to claim ITCs for GST HST paid in relation to their commercial activities, ITCs may not be claimed for GST HST charged under the simplified regime, even when it has been collected in error. In that situation, the customer can currently only recover the tax by requesting a refund from the simplified regime supplier. So, what does this mean in practice for Canadian businesses registered for GST HST? Well, for example, if one of the monthly subscriptions you pay for is G Suite from Google, then if you see GST HST being charged to you, you cannot claim that as a GST HST credit like you normally would expect to. Instead, you need to supply your business number to Google and prevent them from charging you this non-claimable GST HST in the first place. I do have a link from Google's website in the description below on how to do just that. As I read through that GST HST Notice 322, I thought to myself, well, how the f are we supposed to know if a business is charging us GST HST under the regular regime or the simplified regime? Non-domestic businesses can still register for GST HST the regular way. In fact, if they did, they could claim the Canadian ITCs on expenses they paid from a Canadian business, which they can't do under the simplified regime. Personally, I think CRA should also make a requirement for these simplified regime registrants to put a disclaimer on their actual invoice that the GST HST charged is being collected under the simplified regime. But that ain't happening right now, I can tell you that. But CRA did consider this problem, and their solution is to make an accessible and searchable database of businesses who are charging GST HST under the simplified regime. I have linked to that database in the description below. Fine, I guess, so we can look it up. But I wonder why CRA created this level of complexity now to Canadian businesses, having to question what ITCs can be claimed and what ones can't. For years, I have preached to new business owners, only if it is GST or HST can you claim it as an ITC on your CRA GST HST return. You can't claim it if it is anything else, not PST, not RST, not VAT. It's gotta say GST or HST. But now, it's not so simple. I wish that GST HST charged under the simplified regime had a unique tax name like S-GST or S-HST. I don't know. It is what it is, I suppose. So what would happen if a Canadian business claimed the GST HST on those invoices that are from simplified regime registrants when they shouldn't be? Well, if the business is reviewed or audited by CRA, they would be told to pay back those credits they incorrectly claimed. Not only that, they'd be told to also pay interest on the credits that they incorrectly claimed. Not only that, but if it is a substantial enough amount that appears to have been happening for a while, CRA may decide to extend the audit or review to go back up to 4 years to capture those incorrectly claimed ITCs and, yep, interest on all of it. If, like me, you are just really understanding this simplified regime situation right now, then what should your next steps be? I can tell you what I'm going to be doing. First of all, I'm going to take an internal audit of all of the digital subscriptions I have for my business. I'm going to see if they are charging me GST HST, and if they are, I'm going to look each one up in the CRA database of simplified regime GST HST registrants, and I will be going to each one of their websites and find where I can upload my CRA business number to stop those non-claimable ITC charges from even happening, just like on Google's page that I linked below. I do have the option to go even further. If it is a substantial enough amount, I could contact each of those businesses and request a refund of the GST HST paid, and once received, update my bookkeeping to reverse the claim that I had made on those non-claimable ITCs that I am refunded for from the supplier. This would be important for me to do if the amounts were substantial. But definitely, moving forward, I will always submit my business number to those online businesses that request it to avoid being charged that non-claimable ITC. I don't feel exposed by doing that because my business number is required by CRA to be on all of my invoices anyway, so it's not a secret number. And moving forward, if I ever get charged GST or HST from a non-Canadian business, I will look them up in the CRA database of simplified regime GST HST registrants immediately and request that money back. But most of the online non-resident businesses that are business-to-business type services that I have signed up with have asked me for my business number already on sign up. So I do think that now, armed with the reason why they are asking, it's not going to be too much extra work after all. But it still feels a bit more complicated than it needs to be. If you found this video useful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Instagram at BeThatBusiness. You can tweet at me, X at me. I'm at NiftyNomi, and I'm also at NiftyNomi on Twitch and TikTok. And you can find resources and courses about running a Canadian business on my website, naomiwilkins.ca. And you can also subscribe to my newsletter. Created to be interesting and useful, the Be That Business newsletter is a twice-monthly email, one on the 14th of every month with my 3 favorite business hacks for the month, and one on the 29th of every month to share amazing resources to help your business thrive. The video today was recorded in beautiful Gananoque, Ontario. Thanks for watching, and get out there and be that business that thrives.